Hey everybody, so I'm gonna do a quick demo um, based on the assignment because really this isn't supposed to be difficult. It's just giving you a taste of what could potentially be a real job, right? So let's jump into it. Basically, I would read the whole thing first, right? You work for a small company that's been tracking inventory for in it using an Excel spreadsheet. I didn't attach an Excel spreadsheet. It's just this table down here, right? So it's a mimic it. Says it's become prone to errors and difficult to manage. Your task is to convert this Excel sheet, table, into a web-based inventory management system using Node, Express, Sequelize. So really, the language shouldn't matter too much, but I did do almost 2 weeks on this where we did Express and Sequelize, and I was pretty sure I made everyone get Neon Tech working before they left. But if you didn't, this should help. Anyway, requirements. No authentication is required. Again, simple system. 4 pages. List of all the inventory items. A create page to create new items, edit, and delete. It should be obvious. We're going to use Postgres SQL, similar to MS SQL, MySQL, select star from whatever. And we're going to host it on a site called neon.tech. We'll come back to that in a moment. The front end, any HTML and CSS will work as long as that you can do the CRUD operations. I don't care necessarily how you do it. I'm going to use EJS in this demo. You can use whatever you want, even plain old HTML. Backend is Node, Express, Sequelize. And then it says fix the Excel sheet, but again, not the Excel sheet. It's just a sample, right? Makes sense. So as long as you're following the requirements, I don't necessarily care, if you're keeping it inside of models, inventory.js or, somewhere else. I guess this is why people had a lowercase. I wonder why people had a lowercase. Anyway, this is just kind of pseudocode. Also, you don't have to do it in this order, although it kind of gives you, a lot of hints. I don't care what order you do it in. In fact, I'm going to do it in a different order just because people are having so many problems with certain things like importing from a different file and all that. So I'm going to start off with that importing. So if you're following along, open a new Visual Studio Code. I called it assignment 1 and make sure your terminal is in the assignment 1 folder. And all we want to do is npm init, and we can leave basically everything blank. You may want to put your name in here. Well, you should. And everything else is the same. Then I'm going to make a new file and call it server.js. I know we did index.js. Doesn't matter as long as also the package.json is updated, right? So they have to match this server.js has to match this one, or if it's index or whatever, you got to make it match. Next, it looks like the assignment asks you to make a models folder as well as a routes folder, right? So this just separates our code. So I'll do models and routes. Oops, it's inside of there. Yeah, get out of here. Routes. There we go. And then in here in models, it says make inventory.js and then routes inventory.js. You don't have to use this naming convention. In fact, it's kind of messy, right? We could even, it is in the routes folder, but now we have 2 files called inventory, which is kind of crappy. So we could call this inventory routes if we wanted to, or inventory model for this one. It's up to you. Again, it was like a recommendation. And I believe there's going to be a views folder. Oops. For, the HTML that we're going to create or the templates. So this is pretty much the layout that we have for the entire project. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's it. But before I even do anything with the project, what I want to do is, we can do this in kind of chunks, I guess. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to get these exporting to the server.js, right? Because if I don't have these exporting properly, I can't even do these files because who knows, they're not going to work. So this may be new for you, or you may have done it last year, but let's just make something really simple. So in my server.js, I'm going to do console.log server.js. Real simple. I'll do a test node server.js and it outputs it, right? And I'm basically telling myself, hey, I'm in this file. And let's do one, for inventory model and inventory. Oh, I spelled that wrong. Routes, right? This one. right? So I've just, I put these three things in here. If I output this again, it's going to display it on the screen, right? But these aren't coming from these files. So I'm going to grab the inventory one, put it over an inventory model, and I'm also going to grab the inventory routes and put it over here. So our goal is to get this, but from the three different files as opposed to just this one. So just like Express is a module and it sequelizes a module, we can make our own modules, right? So obviously, this inventory model is not going to run if I'm running server.js until I import it. So first thing I want to do is const inventory model equals require inventory, oops, slash models, inventory model. Be careful of this. Actually, hold on, let me just put this back. I guess we can go full screen. Be careful of this dot models, because depending where you are in your code, this will change, right? If you're in a different directory and you want to go back to, it would be dot dot. Dot means like the first folder. So that's the first step. I can save this and then run it, right? Pretty simple. But we don't want our code to run immediately, right? And we also don't want to have it set up like this just to get the output. We want to run this inventory model when we want to, not just immediately as soon as, I save the file or whatever. In fact, speaking of that, I'm going to use nodemon from now on. All nodemon does, and you don't have to use this, it watches for changes in my files. So it will constantly run it. So I don't have to keep going down to the bottom and typing node server. You can download it as a packet or it's a module. Anyhow, so we have this working and we can do the same for routes. But again, we're going to get the two, oops, inventory routes. There we go, I think. Oops, it's not in models, right? It's in routes. But this, again, doesn't help us. We want to run it when we want to run it, not when, we import it. So what do we do? Over here in inventory model, I'm going to, and let's even split it up so this will be easier to see. I'm going to put this console.log into a function. So like I would for any other function, and if you're following along, don't type this yet. So this would be like hello inventory, and we could, put this in here. But to run this function, we'd have to, I'm not sure if we can even do that. Hold on, let's try. Yeah, we can't. It won't let us do this. So in order to run this function, I'd have to run inventory model itself and then do hello inventory. But obviously we don't want to do that. So what we're going to do is put this into a variable. You may or may not know this, but JavaScript allows you to put functions into variables, just like we put the entire inventory model module into this const, right? So const var let. So we're going to do const hello inventory. And we can do this with some of these arrow functions. Again, I like not a huge deal if you don't know the syntax. You can kind of Google it, right? So this is our hello inventory function, which will console.log inventory model. And then all I need to do is export this model or module. So I'm going to do module.exports equals hello inventory. Now, I use this syntax because if you want to export more than one, you need to have these brackets, but we'll come back to that in a moment. So I'm exporting this module, right? Module.exports equals hello inventory, which is this function that we just created. And just, so we have this for later, it's not confusing. This should export over to our server.js. So let's save it and give it a shot. So you can see it happened really quick because I'm running this nodemon, but here I'll do it again. Notice that I still have server.js, but I still don't have this outputting. But hopefully if this hello inventory works, it should be over here in inventory model. Now here's the interesting part of this. I don't notice how this is hello inventory and this is called inventory model. So they don't have to necessarily be called the same thing because I'm exporting it. But in order to use it, I would have to go inventory model dot hello inventory. So it's, it's object-oriented programming. If this works, I should get server.js and I should also get this inventory model.js, which I do, right? So now we can run this whenever we want. If I had multiple things in here, let's say I had goodbye, and we'll just say goodbye. This one is hello, right? So I have hello inventory, goodbye inventory. I have to export this also. So in hello inventory, I put a comma, goodbye inventory, and I save it, but I still only get the hello inventory, right? Because I only have hello model. Now I can do this dot goodbye, and we can run it, and there's our exports. You can also see it this way sometimes. If I just want to take, for example, I don't care about goodbye inventory, I could actually just get hello inventory by doing this. And now I don't need inventory model. I can just run the function itself, right? The same thing. And the same goes for goodbye inventory. So if I want to just run goodbye inventory, and that's why sometimes you see stuff like sequelize, don't whatever, and then you see data types. Because in the source code for sequelize, the actual module, it has two functions, one called data types, one called sequelize, and we're just separating them out, right? So in this case, I just want to use these two. But if I wanted to use this entire inventory model, the entire file, I would just make it inventory model itself, and then I could access the object or any functions inside of the object. Hopefully that makes sense. I'll quickly, do it again for inventory routes. I don't mind it this way, but um, either way is fine. In fact, let's do it this way, right? And then yeah, we'll do goodbye. There we go. So now I'm gonna do the same thing for routes. Um, so it's right here, and I'll just copy paste. Yeah, I just paused it while I was changing it, so you can see there's hello route, goodbye route. I export it, and then over here I'm gonna do them individually like this, and then I'll just use them. Oops, hello route, right? And then I save it, and then there's my models. So hopefully this helps because I know it's been a while since you exported stuff. I prefer using the whole model because then I can see what I'm doing. Because like in here, it's just two functions, and I don't really, if I briefly look at it, I don't really know hello route is from the inventory routes. So I would probably do it this way and like this, and then all you'd have to do is call the actual model with whatever the function is that you want. Right, save it, and there we go. So that's like the first thing I would have done with this assignment is just getting, the routes, or sorry, the exports working, because then now I know I can move on and write some more code, like the connection to the database or write the HTML. Okay, so like I said, you can really do this in any order. I just showed you how to do the exports because you have to kind of use them in order to do this. But you could pick next to do the Express server with serving all the pages of the HTML. You could pick to do the database next. You could pick to also do, the API. I'm gonna do um, connecting to neon.tech because I know we had the thing in the class, but a few people may have missed it. So I'm gonna do this first. So let's see what it says. It says set up your environment. We did most of this, but it says install dependencies. We haven't installed any, right? We just have our server.js and our two files. So I'm going to install all of these. And this is because I'm going to use EJS as my HTML template thing. You don't have to use this if you don't want to. I'm installing body parser and multer because I'm going to make a form, right, that will have the create and the edit page. So we need those. I don't care what you use in regards to the HTML. But you have to use Sequelize, you have to use Express, and then the PG store, whatever. So I'm just going to do this npm install and for everything right over here. So after that's done, you should have an updated package.json. And then what you want to do is go over to neon.tech, right? So it's like .tech is the .com of that. If you don't remember, we would call that the TLD or the top level domain. Anyhow, go there, register. You'll get a screen kind of like this, or a wizard of some sort. But I'm going to show you. So I'm going to click Create Project, and um, actually, hold on. Yeah, sorry, Create Project. I'm just call it whatever. Really, assignment one, right? Or Prog 22 or 2390, whatever. Right? AS1 works. I like AWS. You can pick Azure. It doesn't matter. You're really not going to log into them anyway. And then pick some East Coast server, right? Then create project. When this screen pops up, don't click X, don't click copy code, or sorry, you should click copy code, but we want this Postgres connection string. So copy that, bring it over to your project and create a new file. Even just call it for now readme.md and paste this into here just so we have it, right? Make sure you save it. And then also click on parameters only and you get the same code, but it's split up so that we can read it a little bit better later. But these are the two that we want. This is just like a backup, and then this one. If you didn't get this, it's kind of a pain to decipher um, this connection string. So, maybe go back, delete the database. Much better if you get it this way. Right, so that's number one. Once you have it, you can click down here on tables, and you should be able to, there should be nothing in here, 0 tables, but at least you have your AS1 and it's set up. That's really all you have to do in here at this point. Okay, so if you weren't here for the lab or the lecture, or you didn't understand it or whatever, go back to week 4, and you can open up the Sequelize ORM Postgres. It gives you basically instructions, or you can grab these demo files that I uploaded. So this database Express has database stuff and Express together. This database only has just Sequelize, and this is the one that I want right now. So I'm going to download this and then just open it in, VS Code. You should have had this running, right? That was the whole point of the last class. And now I want to basically take this code and make it better or put it into our project, right? So here's our code. Pretty simple, you know, um, what is it? 40 lines of code, if that's with the spacing. So I'm going to take this entire Sequelize code, and now I don't need this index anymore. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to put it into my inventory model just for now. But I'm going to leave this model.export so I can remember kind of how it works. Let's make this bigger now. So in the model, I want to basically do, you know, this set up the connection, right? So I'm going to piece this out a little bit. Piece it out. Take pieces of it, I guess. So I don't want to do the authentication here. I'm going to get rid of this. And I'm going to throw it over to our server.js. And I also don't want to do our sync because I want to do that when the program first runs. So that's the first thing. So I'm left with, importing sequelize and data types, setting up the database connection, and then making my model, which in this case would be person. Now, just for future reference, because we only have one model, we can do this connection string inside of this inventory model. But in reality, you'd want to probably do it outside of here in server.js because you would want to pass it into inventory model as opposed to, putting it in here because you'd have to put it in every model that you create. But again, for this instance, not a huge deal. So now I want to take my README and I'm going to take, I want to fill this out. So database, username, password. These two things are not the username and password you made for neon.tech, but they're for the actual database. And then the host. So we can do this easily if you got this version of the credentials, right? So I could just do neondb, neondb owner, and then the password, and then the entire host. Notice the host is like the URL. That's what it is, right? That's a subdomain. That's also a subdomain. That's also a subdomain. Then neon.tech. So it goes into here, and we can save this. On a side note, if you didn't get that and you just have the string up here, we'll make it bigger, like the actual connection string. There's a couple ways you can use this in the example in the assignment. It gives you sequelize code that says where the heck is it? Right here. So notice this sequelize code is way shorter, right? And they're saying you can just actually put this entire connection string in here if you want, like this. Right? And this will also work, so I don't have to do this. But I just wanted to show you what the actual connection string was doing, so I like it this way. Again, if you don't have this, you kind of have to decipher this yourself. So here's the username, this is the password, and then this chunk is the host, and then that's the database name. Right? So far, so good. Okay, so obviously you're not going to use person, but I'm not going to hand you the assignment on a silver platter. But um, you know, I'm pretty sure you can figure out what to do next with the creating a model car, placed. I don't know, maybe sell video games, whatever the quote unquote store. Oh shit, you know what? I'm sorry. It shouldn't be that. It should be inventory, right? Because laptop monitor, yeah. So you'll have to change this to match the whatever your database is going to be. Sorry about that, but I'm just going to show you this as a demo. So now what we want to do is, we want to be able to run this sequelize.authenticate and then the sync. And you don't have to do this all at once. In fact, I think it gets confusing if you're copying pasting and, large chunks of code that don't work are sitting in there. So like if I save this and save our model and then run it, I'm going to get an error, obviously. And the error is going to say, module.exports hello inventory and goodbye inventory don't exist. So I don't have those in here anymore. I got rid of them, but I do have sequelize. So I'm going to pass back sequelize. And I also have my person model, which I'm going to send back as well. Right. So back over in server, I can, I'm going to use these directly. So I'm going to change inventory model to be, the two things. So now I should be able to set up my connection string, set up the model, export it over to my server.js, and then my server.authenticate should work. So I'm going to try it. Let's see, clear node server.js. Man, fingers crossed, it looks like it works. Right? So now I have my sequelize authenticate I have the whole sequelize stuff in another file called inventory model. And over here, I just have the authentication because I passed it back into this variable. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys because I think a lot of people are having trouble with that so far. So the next part, I want to, you know, actually sync my database. So I'll put this code back. And now if I save this, right, because I'm running nodemon, this should authenticate and then also create a person table over in neon.tech. So let's check it out. I'm going to save. Fingers crossed. It looks like it worked. Right, selects 1+1, that's our authentication, and then this creates the table. We can go back to Neon Tech refresh this page, and I should see people, which I do, right? So that's pretty cool. So far, so good. We have two separate files doing stuff. So this also means we could do, another test after the database is synchronized. We could try getting some data from um, the person model, right? So first thing I would probably go do, and again, this model is going to be your inventory model, but um, mine's person, even though it's inventory, right? I can't do your whole thing for you, but I'm going to put in some a person. So Harry, oops, and then created at will be today's date. Um, whatever, I'll just pause, right? So just like this, don't forget to click save when you add a new record. And if I go back to the code, after our synchronization happens, I should be able to do people dot find. So it should be person dot find. We could do find all, right? Oops. And it looks like it works. It says database synced and then executing select ID first name created at updated at from people as person, right? So this is now working. I should be able to retrieve data from the database. A couple things with this, um, but we'll bring it up later. This is uh, an async function, so we would want to await it, but we can't do that inside of this file. It's a virtue of JavaScript. Don't worry about it right now. All we want to do is, hey, this works, right? So I can get data, yay. So the next thing I want to do is create our uh, routes. I always get that. And yeah, I saw some of you had the lowercase inventory. Like I said, these names don't really matter, right? Because you're just importing them. But I want to get the routes, um, or I want to set them up, meaning I'd like to serve some web pages. And specifically, I'd like to serve the home page, a create page, an edit page, and a delete button. Now, before in the lab, we made an API, but in this case, we don't have to do that. We can just make the pages, right? So we don't actually have to do what am I trying to say? We can actually serve whatever page we want and then have a post or a put. It doesn't have to be an actual API call, which is, okay. If you do use an API call, you might not want to use EJS because you could use JavaScript to call the API yourself. I don't care how you do it as long as you figure out, how to do it. This is, again, just sample code. You don't have to use this code explicitly, but I'm going to show you how to do it with this code. So go back to our routes file, which still has our hello and goodbye route. And we can get rid of this. And we're going to use Express. We already did npm install Express, so it should be okay. And then we're also going to use this, they call it router. Now, this is so that we can pass this entire inventory routes back to Express, which will be in our server.js. Seems a little confusing, but I'll show you, how it works in a minute. Notice in this code, like I should just copy and paste all of this code. No, that didn't work. That's weird. Try this. There we go. What is this crap? Spaces. Yeah, make sure you copy and paste it properly. Guess that's HTML left over. And this should be arrow functions. Yeah, be careful on your copy paste. Right? Okay, so we're importing Express here, but we're not starting the Express server. We're not even putting any parameters for the Express server over here. All we're using Express for is so that we can instantiate what our routes are going to be, right? So remember in our demo code, we would have Express in our one file, and then our routes would be over here, app.get. Oops, app.get. Stupid. Anyway, you understand. Get, right? And we'd have it over here. But I'm doing this in a separate file just to keep our code totally clean. And all we want to do is send all of this all of these routes back to our server.js so that we can use them later. So notice a few things have changed. We're exporting router, which is built into the express function up here. And this demo code imported our inventory models because we're going to actually, call our inventory stuff in here. But I'm going to do my person one, right? So let's do a couple changes. So in my case, in this demo's case, it's not going to be inventory, right? I'm going to call it person. So I can just take this whole function from over here and paste it here. But I don't care about sequelize in this case. So I don't even need to import sequelize. Also, notice that our inventory routes file is in another folder, right? The routes folder. So this dot models isn't going to work. We have to go back a directory and then, you know, um, we can access this file, right? So you can actually see it work. I think in VS Code, if you do dot dot slash, you can actually just, yeah, exactly like that. So that's person, right? Fix the code if you copied and pasted it. Oops. Right. And in fact, I'm gonna get rid of these other ones for now, just because I don't care. Or we're gonna show you. I'm not gonna show you them all, but I'll do this one. So right now, I have person, and obviously you're gonna have inventory, but I'm having person, and I'm gonna say get all the people. Right. This could be called whatever, but it's items. And then it says render index and items. So this is part of EJS. Again, you don't have to do it but this way, but I want to do it this way. It's easier. I find it easier. So this is saying render the index page and send in all of the people. So I'm actually going to change this to people just so you can see it a little bit easier. You know, right? So there's person, get the people, list all the people. Right? We don't have an index page yet, but I do have the route for it. We're going to make the index page shortly in our views folder, but for now, we don't have an index page, so keep that in mind. But we know that person.findAll works because we used it over in our server, right? So that was the things we changed. I changed a couple of the names, make sure the require function is right. You can't just copy and paste code from this because as you saw, first of all, there was like weird spaces, and then I don't know what folder structure you have, right? This was just a sample piece of code. So there was that. And then module.exports, I'm exporting router now as opposed to, hello inventory routes, which means over in our server, I can no longer, or I should no longer call it inventory routes. I should just call it router. Now notice in the sample code, they didn't put the brackets. You can if you want to, if you prefer to do it that way. I like to keep everything kind of similar. JavaScript has 18 different ways to do one thing, so I like to keep it as consistent as possible. So I just saved my file. I paused my screen before it happened, but as soon as I saved the inventory routes and also the server, everything worked fine. The database synchronized. I still haven't done anything with router, but we'll get there in a second. But if you got this far, it means yeah, hey, it's working so far. So we'll just minimize this a little bit or make it smaller. Now notice, you know, it gives you some sample code just to give you a head start, but it doesn't tell you everything, which is, yeah, it's kind of frustrating. But imagine you went into a business, all you would have is this. And they're like, we need to make it better. You have to come up with all this other stuff yourself. So the next step that we really need, we have, our database working. We have most of the back end working. I didn't make these other things. We'll come back to it, but we do have, that. And we have to make the view still, like the index that I was talking about earlier. And I also have to make the server because so far I just have the routes. I'm not running any server. So how do we do that? If you don't know, go back to week 4 and grab the code that says database express. Download it. and just open it in Visual Studio, right? We're going to steal some stuff from here, right? So this is really simple Express server, right? It's only in the one server file in server.js, but I want to split it up a little bit. Now, we already have our routes in inventory routes, so I don't need too much. All I really need is to instantiate Express as a new app, figure out the port. I'm not going to use JSON this time because I'm actually going to use HTML, and then I'm going to run the server. So I only need a few lines of code. So this should be pretty easy. We're going to import Express over here. Right, so this is our server.js. I don't need inventory routes at the moment. Do it at the very top. Then I will instantiate it. So we have app now, and then we can do the stuff with apps. Most importantly, we're going to start listening on the port, right? So here's my port. I'm going to use 8080 for nostalgia purposes. And then all the way down here, app.listen, I'm going to start the server. Now remember, we don't want to start the server. We could start it outside of this. Sorry, we can make this bigger. We could start the server outside of the sequelize, but then we get that race condition type problem. So I'm going to put it inside of the database synchronized. And there's one more thing we need. We right now this just runs Express as a normal server, but if I actually run this code, so I'll save it, you'll see that server's running in port 8080, which is great. In fact, let's make life easy. Localhost, and I should be able to click on it. But notice I can't get anything because I don't have any routes yet, right? So we have to take the routes from inventory routes, which we've already imported into our server.js, and then tell Express, hey, we're going to use these routes from, somewhere else, in this case from our other file. Pretty easy to do. We just say, oops, app dot use, and then slash router. And really, we could call this routes. They don't have to be the same as long as these two are the same, but I'll stick with that. Doesn't matter. I'll stick with this for now. So if I run this code, you should see everything looks normal. And then server running on port, whatever we should change this server running at. Doesn't matter. But when I click on this, you're going to see it does something funky. App crashed, localhost 8080 can't do anything. But believe me when I say this is good, it's okay. Here, we'll put it up here. Down here, sorry. Because the error isn't about the database or anything, it's about not finding um, the template for index. But the good news is that this app.use router is actually working for us now. So what's next? The next thing I would do is obviously use the template, right? Sorry, 1 second. Okay, so EJS is this templating system, but before we get into that, we could easily, you know, not easily, but we could do this kind of ourselves. And when I say kind of ourselves, I can make a new HTML file in views, right? Index.html, and just make a blank, hello world. Pretty easy. And then over in our our routes, we could do something like this. Now, don't do this yet because it's not what I'm going to do. But instead of this render, which is part of the EJS thing, I can do res.send file. I think it's path.join. And then, yeah, it's like this. Views and index.html. So when I save this, it should allow me to see the HTML, right? But this doesn't allow me to get the data that I just got from person.findAll, which worked, right? You can see right here. It doesn't let me get this data into the HTML file, which is what we want. I want you to get a page that, displays the data. So we use this thing, we use a templating system. You guys did this with ASP, you probably did it with this as well. And I'll just show you quickly how I'm going to do this for this particular person model. So the first thing I would do is you could read the documentation on EJS. EJS, yeah, I think it's this one. Yeah, I think they have a website. Yeah, here we go. Right, read the documentation. It's not too difficult. It's actually pretty cool how quick you can get this. But see the res.render, that's where this came from. So I'm going to use this. And the first thing we do is we know we're no longer working with HTML files, right? We have a server that's going to manipulate the HTML files before they send them back to the user. So I'm going to rename this to index.ejs because again, there's no HTML anymore in this particular case. Oops. Um, okay, and then I'm going to go back to our site and I'm going to grab this code and drop it into our EJS file like this. Oh, was that the whole thing? Where the heck did it go? Be careful when you're doing. I think it's because I'm in like edit mode or something. But hold on, let's see if I can grab this code better. Go right here. Oh yeah, that's way better. What the heck? Well, give me a second. Here we go. And if you look through this template, you can see, it has a lot of stuff in it. But let's go over it really quickly. Now again, mine's not the inventory list. You have to do your own. Mine's person, right? But I'm gonna leave this pretty much as it is. You look at this, it has it imports Bootstrap, which just makes it look better, and then um, it creates a table because there's going to be a list of all the inventory, or in my case, people. And then notice these like tags, right? So there's like a let's just make it bigger. The bracket, then percent, and then items for each, blah blah blah. So EJS allows us to put code inside of our quote unquote HTML because this is not HTML, right? If you think about way back to the start, and I know you just want to get this done, but and so do I. It's 11 o'clock. But if you think back to our code, or back to this stuff, this is our client, and this is our server. And the client asks for the index, and the server says, "Yeah, no problem, but I'm gonna first connect to the database, grab that, and then I'm also gonna grab the index.ejs file." And the template system does stuff for us, so it can run code. Like example, this is going to run a loop through the array items, and once it's done that, it converts it just to regular HTML and sends it back to our client. So our client doesn't know any of this code, or it doesn't see any. It all happens on the server. So that's why we don't care, or it's not called HTML anymore. It's called EJS in this case. Okay, so I'm going to leave this for now, but I don't have name, quantity, price, right? If you remember, our model only has first name, but let's get it just working first. So there's my EJS file, and this should already be in here. You should have res.render index. I changed mine from items to people, but this should hopefully still work. Notice that index, I don't have to put .ejs at the end. It just automatically assumes that it's an EJS file. So if I click on this, I'm probably going to get an error, but I should get a page of some sort. Oh, I guess not. Okay, well, let's find out what's going on. Oh, yeah, we didn't set it up. It says no default engine was recognized. So a couple other things you still have to do. Just like Fortnite uses the Unreal Engine, our Express server uses a rendering engine, or it can, but we have to tell it to do it because it doesn't have one by default. So let's tell it. It's pretty easy. We just do app.use, no, sorry, set view engine, and then EJS. I think that should work. Let's try it out. And yeah, it works. Okay, so I'll just refresh. I know it works because I'm not getting the other error like not found, but it's giving me an error because items doesn't exist, which is fine. But at least this works. By the time you get to this point, it should actually work. So congratulations. Okay, so I'm gonna close this side of the window so I can put the browser up on the other side. But no, hopefully you know that I'm connecting to the DB, getting all of the people, putting it into an array called people. Then I'm going to use this render function to render index, and the render function takes an array, and in this case, it's an array of all the people, right? And then when this render function runs, it comes over to index.js and then looks for code in here. In our case, I can run JavaScript code, right? Here's a for each. The reason we're getting the error, so I'll close this. Just put these side by side. Get out of here. There we go. Right, notice that it can't find items. There's no such thing as items because I called it people. So I'm going to do people.forEach. I'll save this, and then notice that error goes away. But there's no item.name, no quantity, no price, right? I just have first name. So first name, save, refresh, and then it says, what's the error? Oh, sorry, it's not first name. It would be item.first name, right? Because notice I do people dot for each, and then I called it item, but it should be called person. Whatever. I'll leave it as item. Hopefully you understand that. And now finally we get some kind of page. Now I don't have any, there's no people. Oh yeah, I guess there is one actually, right? There's me. So hold on, let's find out why it's not showing, me. It should, right? Because we have this one. But let's figure that out. So, but this is good. So far, so good, right? I think this might be something to do with EJS, or I'm not sure. But if I look at my model, it is okay. Sorry, so it is it's case sensitive. So I called my first name with a capital F, and over here I'm calling it as lowercase. So be careful of this. So I'm going to change it to capital F, and you'll see under name it should pop up my name, which it does, right? And then again, you don't have to do this because you're actually going to have those other fields, but no, I don't. In fact, I can just make it look like this, right? So I have my name and then edit, delete. So hopefully that helps you, right? It's not rocket science. So this would get you to almost the inventory list, but we still have to make add, edit, and delete, right? Right now, as part of the CRUD operations, this is read, right? So, yeah, so create would be add, update is edit, and then delete, and then this one is read. So in order to do the rest, I'm not going to show you them all because now I've done I don't know, 50% of the assignment for you, kind of. But just to show you at least the way to go back to your routes. And let's say, for example, we want to, I don't know, I guess we could do delete. Yeah, let's do delete. I don't care. That's fine. So I'm going to make delete, right? And it's making a route for delete and then ID. So we need to figure out this code. So, I'm pretty sure it's destroy. Like that's such a harsh term, right? So we would do um, person dot destroy. Like it's so crazy. And then we got to put the parameters in. The parameters would be where, and then ID equals whatever we pass in. So we do have to get that ID from somewhere, right? And if we go back to our EJS file, you'll see here's the delete button, and it has a form, right? And the action is delete, and action same as route, delete, and then whatever the ID is. So if I go to our source code over here and I right click, go inspect, in fact, the delete button should have code in it that has the number 1, I would guess, because that's the first one I did, so I can check it out. And it does, right? So right here, delete 1. And if I had more in here, it would have 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, right? But we have to tell our route that we want to get the 1 when someone clicks on this. So the form action is the button delete. I'm going to go to the route delete slash whatever the ID is. So in our case, this, right? And the method type is a post. So it's going to run this route, router.post, because it matches. And then we got to get this ID. So how do we do that? It's not too difficult because we included our own. At the start, we npm and installed the multer and all of that kind of stuff. And basically, we say in the user's request, which is req, which is this right here, we want to access the parameters, and the parameter that we want to access, which is this right here, is ID. If this parameter was called whatever, this would then now be called whatever, right? But it's actually called ID. Okay, so this should destroy or delete, sorry, and we want to await it, right? Because it's a sync. We want to wait until it's done, and then after it's done, we're gonna do res.send. We could send them back. We could do a redirect. We could send them back to the index page, which would give us a refresh. So it should be just slash, I think, something like this. We give it a shot. Well, let's make. I'll double check. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this should work. Okay, so again, here's our server. We haven't touched anything in here really. Well, we did the EJS, but in here we created a post for delete and the ID. We destroy or aka delete whatever the ID is by getting the parameter called ID, and then we just send the user back to the page. Now, most times you would actually put something like delete successful or whatever. In fact, we could do that in the console. Delete OK. And we should probably put this in a try and a catch. You should put all of your stuff in a try and a catch just to make sure. Something like that. I guess we could do, I don't know, status code, right? Res.status 500 error deleting. Something to that effect. And then I'll organize my code better, and hopefully, if I go back here and I click delete, should erase this, and it does. Right? Not too bad. I'm going to quickly go back into here and refresh just to make sure it deleted. Yeah, which it did. So I'll add another one. Oops. Jane. Just quickly. We'll add a couple to make sure our loop works. Right. And then that should be okay. Then I'll just refresh the page. There you go. Right. So I can delete Jim, Jane, whatever. So now, you can basically do your assignment. There's probably another hour or two left if you got to make the other pages and stuff. But that's basically it. Hopefully the video helped you. Let me know if you have any questions. You can email me again, or Discord's always popular because again it's like what 11. I'm still up, right? So again, I hope that helped. Let's just wait. Let's see if I missed anything in this. Just anything last minute. Oh yeah. Okay. So again, you'll still have to read all of this and make sure you are correcting, how this works. Like this is not a great database, right? Maybe you need two models. I don't know. You'll have to figure it out for yourself. But I could have two laptops in here, which is weird. Or oh, I guess this is a duplicate. Anyway, it might be. Yeah, I guess it's more simple than anything. It's more of the bad data, like the negative sign, or putting a price in as a character. You're gonna actually have to validate this, right? I'll leave you with that. Good luck. Don't wait till the last minute because you see I paused the video a couple times because I had errors and I had to go look, at some or Google even how this kind of worked. Quick recap: created a new project, npm initiate. Then I installed um, npm install express, sequelize, all of these other ones. I set up my actual file structure with the routes directory, the views directory, models directory. I did server.js, then the inventory routes and the inventory model. I made sure that I didn't even do any of this code. I just made sure that my exports worked first, right, for both files. Then I did the sequelize in here and then added the authentication to my server.js. After that worked, I went to my inventory routes, made sure that um, my first get worked, and I didn't even bother with the render, right? And then I went back to server.js, made sure instantiated expressed, added the view engine, used the router, so on and so forth, made sure the app.listen is running, and that was pretty much it. So do the stuff in order, and you should be fine. Or sorry, not in order. Do your chunks of code in order, right? So you don't want to do sequelize and express and EJS and not even test it one at a time because you're going to get into big trouble and have 20 different errors. Anyway, that's it. See you later.